Hey guys, so I made a second character, put Charge Dash on hold for a little bit, just because uh, I league started it just to see how that went, and as expected, it's a CI character, is a little slow for league start, needs a few uniques, so probably a better second character than league start, so I went ahead and leveled another Trickster, um, and this one's a firewall um, trickster, and instead of using fireball with it, I'm using ball lightning um, with greater multi-proj, increased AoE to spread the secondary dot of flame wall. So I'm gonna run through a map real quick so you can kind of see how it plays, and then explain the mechanics. This probably is the character with the most going on, especially coming from Charge Dash, where really all you have is you just hold right click for everything and use your Charge Dash to kill stuff, and then Wave of Conviction is needed to apply curses and exposure. This has a little bit more going on. We have Elemental Equilibrium, so we're going to go through that. So this is only a tier 7 map. I'm not overly far through maps. Right now I'm level 79. And I still need to get some gear to get my life up a bit, but this is workable right now with the 4300 1000 energy shield. Definitely not the tankiest, but not overly squishy, especially with the Trickster regen. So you can see I'm using ball lightning. I'm using flame wall mostly, and you can see that I've also got Scorching Ray on here. So I'll talk about it a little bit more, but a lot of this is throwing down flame wall, throwing ball lightning through it. It applies this debuff to everything, which does however much damage. The one thing with that is it does proc Elemental Equilibrium on fire and lightning because it's hitting with lightning. So it's not too bad overall to just let everything get the plus resist to fire. But then on stronger things, we want to throw down Stormbrand so that they get the Elemental Equilibrium proc, so that they get negative fire resist. So that took me probably longer than it should have to figure out when looking at, because this is a build that I just kind of found on Poe.ninja, but it took me a while to figure out that that's how that was going. Just you're gonna give stuff fire resist with ball lightning in general, but you get around that with Stormbrand hitting with just lightning damage. So the general playstyles really quick, and the reason I'm liking this one, I tried Fireball for a bit, but definitely the reason I'm liking this one more is ball lightning travels much easier, and I mean like it just goes over everything, whereas Fireball, even with Fork, which it looks like more people are doing, it'll hit like one thing and then continue on to hit another, but ball lightning just moves over everything, does multiple hits, and one of the things that it gives us is a really nice synergy with the Stormfire ring. Typically, you only see Stormfire to get the ignite procs, so you'll see it with like Discharge Ignite or Divine Ire Ignite, and you just do big lightning damage to ignite. We don't care as much about the lightning damage we're doing, or that. So the lightning damage ignite is kind of secondary for us, but we care about the mod of for each time an enemy was ignited recently, you get increased burning damage. So with ball lightning, since it's doing so many hits, it hits so many things like very quickly, we get a huge damage bonus on that. And I'm not quite there to have it equipped. If I get like one more level, then I'll get it, but I figured I'd make the video now and just explain it, and then just be able to run through a little more later. Yeah, another thing that was weird getting used to this is just getting the buttons down. I haven't played many elemental equilibrium builds, so just having buttons and needing to make sure that the right order of stuff hits is different. The closest thing I've played is probably Essence Drain Contagion, but with that one, it's like if you don't put down your Wither Totem, it's not giving the enemy increased resistances, it's just not giving them the negative. Where in this, if you don't put down your Stormbrand on something, some of these like yellow mobs, then they've got that plus 25% resist, which is pretty big sometimes, or at least you can feel it. Whoops. That's the other thing, is if you throw if you're throwing ball lightnings without the wall of fire down, they're doing virtually no damage. So a lot of times I'll think that I have cast the flame wall, but maybe my cast speed isn't enough, or just the animation didn't go yet, and I start casting ball lightnings and they're not getting the effect. So you can see though that it moves pretty quickly, and really a lot of times I throw multiple ball lightnings. I don't think that matters until we get our Stormfire ring. Then you'll want to throw a couple, because each ignite proc we get will increase our damage. But yeah, so that's a map. Now I'll talk about the gear and tree a little bit. So let's talk about the tree first, because it's pretty straightforward. So in the Trickster area, we take the health, we take the easy damage over time, but that's pretty much it. And then we're moving mainly towards these fire damage over time multiplier nodes. So this is the big one, Breath of Flames with 10% multiplier. Holy Fire also has 10% multiplier, so we want to hit both of those. And then there's just a lot of good elemental damage stuff over here in Templar area. And Glancing Blows is nice quality of life. And I think I talked about it last time, or during the Charge Dash build, but even with the 65%, so on average you take more damage, but it prevents one-shots more often. And that's really what we're worried about, I guess, especially as Trickster, because with Patient Reaper you're regenning so quickly that as long as you don't get just fully one-shot, you're usually okay. So a lot of the extra stuff has to do with that, like this gives us spell damage and attack and spell block. This gives us spell block and some mana regen. And then this is nice, it gives us the power charge when you block, and some extra block for spell and attack damage. These are just all good nodes in the Templar area, really good nut life nodes, just really useful resist, spell damage, and stats. We jump down here to get Elemental Equilibrium, and then we grab the skill effect duration, because it helps Flame Wall. So that's mostly it. We're using Elemental Overload. But besides that, the big idea is we're just hitting all the big fire damage and fire damage multi-nodes on the tree. And then just grabbing any life that's near us as we're doing it. So, pretty straightforward. Nothing too crazy, no crazy cluster jewels. I think they took away a lot of the good fire damage multi-cluster jewels. So something more like this, where we're just manually getting all the ones on the tree, all the elemental damage is probably better if they did take those. The Ascendancy Setup is pretty typical of a damage over time build. We're getting Patient Reaper first, going to Ghost Dance and Escape Artist to get the defensive stuff, and then we'll get Prolonged Pain later for the more damage over time multiplier. And yeah, pretty straightforward. Especially if you're familiar with Trickster, most of this makes sense. Trickster, one thing that I haven't put in yet is I think Trickster will be very good with Vitality, because Vitality gets you up to near 200 life per second, and Patient Reaper, the bottom line of 70% increased recovery rate of life if you've killed someone afflicted by damage over time recently, is basically always happening, so you'll always have 70% increase life recovery on that Vitality regen, which gives you some really nice regen and helps sustain against bosses, because since this is one of our big sustain things, if we're not killing, then we don't have our sustain. So Vitality will really help on bosses, I think, and give us a little more survivability as we kite around. So, looking at items, Searing Touch is just really straightforward. The staff is nice because the staff nodes are good. They do all the block synergy stuff really well, and I just like the staff. You could potentially get more damage off of 2 wands with like 30% fire multi on each one and whatever else. But this, I don't know, it's hard to beat this without really good crafts, and it synergizes with staff stuff. I got this for like 4C, so really affordable. I just picked up Crown of the Inward Eye for like 4 chaos as well. This is one I've never tried before. It gives you the 3 transfigurations. The main one we care about is Soul. Mind is also good for us, but we don't have quite as many mana things. But there's a couple on the tree that we get with that spell block area. It also gives us global increased energy shield, which is quite a bit. If you look, this is 1,000. So we're getting 300 increase because it's hitting other stuff, and could even be more if we get more energy shield, like boots or gloves. So this seems good going in endgame. Maybe resists become a little hard to cap. I think I'm low on cold, and that'll get fixed at some point. I think I have an open suffix on here to fix it. But alternative to this is just any good defensive helm with like life resist. If you get percent of physical damage taken as an element, that's a nice defensive layer. So really anything works though. Similar with rings, amulets. Amulet, you want to get fire damage over time multiplier eventually. I just have life and stats really. So fire damage over time multiplier, if you can get plus to intelligence or fire skill gems. I think it's Hunter Influence gives you the fire damage over time multi, and I don't remember which one gives you the plus to gems. The ring that we want to get is the Stormfire ring. I could pull it up, but I'm not going to right now. But the Stormfire ring is the typical one if you're using lightning spells with Ignite. So it lets your lightning spells ignite and gives you bonus damage for each enemy ignited recently. So that one's big for us with Ball Lightning, because Ball Lightning is igniting so many things so quickly. So just a nice damage boost there, and a reason to use Ball Lightning over Fireball or something else. I mean, really for the rest, like just life and resist on these three, like your boots, your belt, your glove. Life resist, if you get a good Stygian Vice, then that's great. To save a link here, you could get faster projectiles on your gloves. Socketed gems supported by faster projectiles. And usually you see Ball Lightning with slower projectiles, which is a big damage increase. But really we don't care about the damage at all. We just want it to cover the whole screen. So we put faster projectiles, throw them over the whole screen. It applies the flame wall debuff to everything, and everything burns for that debuff damage. For the gloves, like I said, you could get the socketed gems supported by faster projectiles. You could also get up to like 24% fire damage over time multiplier, which is a nice, maybe it's up to 16% actually, not 24. But still a nice DPS boost with that. Kind of just whatever you're looking for. If you need the extra slot or if you want the fire damage. Our flasks are garbage right now. Witchfire Brew is the one damage boosting one. Other than that, just whatever defensive flask you want. And so that's mostly it for items. Oh, the big one. So right now I have Carcass Jack, just for no reason other than I had it, and it gives area of effect, which is nice with the Ball Lightning covering the screen, helps Flame Wall as well, and has some life. I think the one I would choose would be Skin of the Loyal. Gives +1 to skill gem levels. If we use Empower with it, then it's really nice. If you can somehow get a corrupted one with the +1 socketed skill gems, then it's just incredible. So I'd imagine that's probably your best bet. You could do something more defensive, like what's the one called that gives you phase acrobatics for free? Wow. Oh, perfect form. So you can do perfect form. It's more defensive. But really, either way, I think just boosting your damage with the Skin of the Loyal is probably your best route. And the defensive side just comes from the play style, like the standing back. You get to throw stuff very far. You have good block and decent energy shield with regen. There's one other one that was kind of on the table, but I think Skin of the Loyal is mostly going to be the option or the choice. It brings up another possibility for the belt is Soul Tether. The Replica Soul Tether. So Replica Soul Tether gives you whatever that passive is that gives you 20% of your max life as energy shield. So for us with our 4,000 to 5,000 life, at end of this build you probably end up with about 5,000, 5,500. So 25% or 20% of that is like 1,200, which is pretty substantial and giving us like a higher chunk of EHP. And we replenish it pretty nicely with our Patient Reaper passive. So that could be the better route rather than just having life and resist on here. If you're trying to use Soul Tether and Crown of the Inward Eye, resist get a little bit harder to cap, but you can use jewels to fill that out. And that's most of the build. I'll talk about just kind of how the skills go and ordering. So we have Stillskin Self-Cast right now. You can easily link it to, like, if you get your sockets working a little bit better than mine, then you can link it to cast and damage taken. It's probably ideal. So our first and main skill is Flame Wall. So this is the new spell, and it does a damage over time on its own, which isn't too substantial, but then it also applies this secondary debuff that does some amount of fire damage per second. Right now, my tooltip's 100,000. And then projectiles that pass through it get some added fire damage, which we don't care about with the ball lightning setup. So our main thing is the last line of the description says any projectiles that go through the wall will apply the wall secondary debuff on hit. So we can set down our wall in front of us, throw a ball lightning through, and then it applies the secondary debuff to anything it touches. It also gets the fire damage on hit, so even without the ignite from Stormfire, it'll still be igniting. We just don't really get anything right now off of its ignite effect. We really care about the secondary debuff of Flame Wall. So that's kind of the like your 1-2 setup, almost like your Contagion Essence Drain or Essence Drain Contagion of this build. So your two main buttons, your channeling skill. If you're familiar with Essence Drain Contagion Trickster, this feels pretty close to Essence Drain Contagion and then Blight. But so your channeling skill, Scorching Ray, it gives fire exposure, and while you're channeling you take less fire damage from hits, you get infusion, and then you can get inspiration too once you get inspiration in your gem setup. So this is just added damage, helps with single target, gives exposure, so lower fire resist. Basically just something to do if stuff's not dying quick enough. The big one that was kind of weird to me is Stormbrand, and the only reason for this is it enables us to use elemental equilibrium, which, just in case you're not familiar, let's look at it. So the idea is if you hit a unit with fire damage, let's say, then that unit will now have 25% increased fire damage and 50% decreased cold and lightning resist. 25% increased resistance to fire damage and 50% lower resist to cold and lightning. So the big point in there is enemies you hit. Now when we're looking at our skills, Flame Wall doesn't hit. It's just an AoE thing on the ground that doesn't hit. Same with Scorching Ray. It's like just a degen, doesn't hit. Ball Lightning hits with lightning damage, but it also hits with fire damage because it picked up that fire damage when it passed through the Flame Wall. So if we just use Flame Wall Ball Lightning, we're actually giving everything increased resistance to fire and lightning, and they only get the reduced to cold. And when we're killing stuff quick enough anyway, that's all fine. But on the stronger units and signal target, we want to throw down Stormbrand because it hits for lightning damage and doesn't pass through Flame Wall. It's not a projectile. So it'll trigger elemental equilibrium for only lightning damage, meaning that whatever it hits will have increased lightning resist but reduced fire and cold resist. So that's the whole idea of this. For both of these, we can keep them at a lower level, and actually that's something that I haven't done with Ball Lightning. I've been leveling it, and I think ideally I just have this as level 1 Ball Lightning, because then it costs less mana, and I don't care about the lightning damage it's dealing, because it's rather insignificant. Since I'm not boosting it at all, I'm actually lowering it more with my support gems. So that's basically the build. Righteous Fire comes in at some point. I don't know where I put it. I mean, it gives you more spell damage and just gives you the degen for bosses. So definitely useful to have. I've seen some people put it alongside their Scorching Ray links. So if you have a 5-link Scorching Ray in a 6-link, you can put the Righteous Fire in, and then it'll still pick up like a couple of these, like burning damage and efficacy, I think. So you can move it around in there, but that's mostly it. Pushing this build further is mainly going to be just filling out the couple items I said, getting some more life on gear, getting extra fire damage multiplier, getting an Empower Gem and a 6-link, and plus gem skill levels on an armor. And yeah, that's mostly it. You guys saw clearing tier 7 was pretty easy with relatively budget gear. And even before Searing Touch, like, it wasn't too bad. Just using wands with like some small amount of fire damage over time multiplier felt about the same. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to keep this one pretty short. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Again, I mostly just picked this up off of Poe.ninja. Like, saw that some people had this setup going, and decided to give it a try. Because I had done Fireball, Ignite, Trickster, and this looked a little more fun. And I was leveling with Flame Wall, Fireball, and it felt a little clunkier. I tried to put Fork with Fireball, and it was okay. Like, I could see how people are using it just fine, and Fireball is a little more independently strong without the Flame Wall. So whereas if you cast Ball Lightning without Flame Wall, it's 0 damage for us. On the Fireball builds, if you cast Fireball without Flame Wall, you can still ignite and kill stuff. So those are kind of the give and takes. I like the one that leans more heavy on clear with Ball Lightning. It just feels a little smoother, I think. Less casts are needed to cover the whole screen. And you get to use Elemental Equilibrium to really give a big negative resist. You can't do it with Fireball because Fireball counts as a hit. But yep, that's basically it. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions. See you guys.